Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad that everybody is here. As many of you know, I just got back from my honeymoon, so it's good to be back to the frigid cold. I'm glad to see you guys here. If you're new or visiting or a guest, I want to let you know that Lighthouse Church is a come as you are church where everyone is welcome, and that we do life together through the good times and the bad times, the hard times, and to be there and support each other, we need to know each other. And so usually we go around and greet one another face to face, but instead we're going to do a social distance greeting. Go ahead and wave and say hi to anybody you don't know. Introduce yourself. It's fine to yell across the room if you want to give out your name there. And so I'm glad that you guys are here, and I'm going to ask you now to stand and join us in a time of worship.
face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. 'Cause when we see you, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Washed away. Hosanna, Hosanna. You are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. Hosanna, Hosanna. Come and reign among us. We welcome you here, Lord Jesus. Hosanna, 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 Hosanna. When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus.
You may be seated. We're going to continue our time of worship with a word of prayer, so if we join me in bowing your heads. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. God, we thank you for the blessing of this life. Lord, we ask that you forgive us for how often we make things about ourselves, about the ways of this world. Take our focus completely off of you, pursuing only what we want. God, we ask that you would help us to recenter ourselves today around you, around your ways, fully embracing your love, your grace, and your mercy. God, we thank you that your mercy is new each day, that your forgiveness is unending, that your love is deep. God, help us to fully embrace your love, to be filled with it, and to shower it onto others in our lives and in our community. God, we know that there are those who need your healing hand upon them, who have strayed from you, who have never come to know your great love. There are individuals you have placed on our hearts for prayer, and we lift them up to you by name at this time. Lord, you know their needs. You know their hearts. And you know our hearts as well. We ask that you would show us, Lord, how we might be your hands and feet in this world, serving others, showering them with the great love that you have shown us, carrying them the message of the good news that your Son carried to us, that your kingdom is here. God, we thank you for your Son, his great teachings. We ask that you would help us to always live out his teachings. And we join together at this time in the prayer that he taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come.
Thank you, Aaron, and good morning to everybody. It's good to see you this morning. I too want to welcome you to Lighthouse Church. So this is normally the time we take our noisy offering and our church offering. Yes, we take two offerings. So let me tell you what we're doing. We're not passing baskets right now. So there was a little table on your way in where there is a jar. If you brought some spare change, we collect spare change every week, and we give it away. We decided not to have a ministry at Lighthouse to support those less fortunate, but to support other ministries that do that. So all the change goes to another organization downtown that could use our support. And then if you brought a tithe or offering, there's a basket on that same table, and that can go in there. We want you to know that you're not expected to give. A church offering, if you're new here or to church at all, is a chance to respond to God with your possessions and an opportunity to support a local church. But we're just glad you're here today and hope that you're blessed and returned to be with us. So let me share just a couple of announcements. Want to remind you that on Sunday evenings there are some meetings that take place here. At 5:30 there's an AA meeting and an Al-Anon meeting that both meet here. If those pertain to you, you'd be welcome. At 6:30 is our spirituality recovery group. Everybody here is welcome to that. We will be taking this morning's topic, and we will be getting into some various groups and discussing it. If you are new, it's really a great way to get connected. And we'd love to see you back tonight at 6:30. Do want you to read your bulletin. So there are some things that are going on this week that you might want to be aware of. A new prayer group that's going to be studying prayer and then praying. And Recovery Reinvented, if you're familiar with that statewide event, we're going to be watching it in here this week. So you'd be welcome to participate in that here. And then there is a craft day next Saturday as well. So lots going on. Seems like I feel like I should say something every week about COVID. And this week is the same. Many of you know that we had a little bit of an outbreak amongst our staff this last week. Not me, not Aaron, not Melinda. Well, Melinda and Johnny have already had it, but we had 4 staff members who did come down with it this week, and a couple of others who had to quarantine the week. And so I mostly wanted to tell you that if you knew that, or if you know who they are, they're all doing well. Everybody's in the healing recovery process, and I think will be rejoining us this coming week. So keep them in your prayers, and just a reminder that we're going to just kind of really be self-conscious of such things right now, because we don't want to be shut down. We want to maintain our operations, and we know that it's of such critical importance to a lot of people. So if you can practice social distancing, we're especially just asking you to please wear a mask coming in and out when you're in a kind of a small quarters and things. And if you can't social distance, please consider wearing a mask. And we're going to do our best to maintain those practices and stay open throughout these very difficult times, right? So thank you for what you are doing with that. So want to welcome those of you who are watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube, and we are glad that you are here. So we have been in a series where we have been talking about identity crises. We've been talking a little bit about who we are, some of the messages that we speak to ourselves about who we are that are more self-destructive than they are helpful. And we've been talking about what the Bible says about who we are. We are in week 7. We're going to wrap up next week, actually, this series. And today, we're going to be talking about that you are a friend. And we're going to unpack that both in regards to our friendship with God, but also with one another. And to get us started, we decided that we would put on a little bit of a little fun thing to get us started. Let me tell you before we do that, if you are watching on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, you're not going to hear the song because we don't have copyright to do that, so there's nothing wrong with your song or with your sound, and we will be coming back to you, but you will get to see the slideshow. for the song. So we're going to kind of follow that theme of friendship, and we're going to start with our question time. Here it is. Who is a friend who has impacted your faith life or your life in a positive way, and how so? Who is a friend who has impacted your faith life in a positive way? Let me just say before we get started that if you're interested in answering the question, we'll take a few answers, and these guys will run microphones, get their attention. Stand up, speak directly in the mic, give us a brief answer, and here we go.
Hello, Lighthouse Church. These two are my best friends in the whole wide world, and I would be lost without them.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Hi, church family. I'm Julie. It has been my entire church family. There isn't a person that goes here that hasn't always made me feel welcome and always made me feel amazing when I've fallen out for a while and I've come back, and it's like I never left. And it's been like that since day one.
Thanks, Julie. All right, who is a friend who has impacted your faith life in a positive way, and how so?
Hi, I'm Jen, and of course these two ladies are my very best friends. I don't know what I would do without them. And also my friend Lisa, she is always encouraging me, praying for me, and loving me, and not judging me. And it's just amazing to have friends like that. So,
Thanks, Jen. In the back. There we go.
After I came to believe in God, I was still very judgmental towards religion. And I didn't understand why anybody with half a brain would be a Christian. And my friend Jim, who I met in an anonymous program, who was a good friend and I also considered very intelligent, and a lot of the views that I had, but he seemed different in some ways, in some moral ways. And I found out he was a Christian. Like, he wasn't really outspoken about it, but when I found out, I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Here's a regular, nice, smart, intelligent man who was a Christian. Maybe I wonder if I've looked at it wrong. So, well, it helped open up my mind a little bit.
Thank you, Jeremy.
I have a friend that's quite a bit older than me, a dear friend of mine, and we sat down here a little while back, and he talked to me about the prodigal son, and This man has always been there for me, kind of more on that unconditional level.
Yeah.
And I thank him for that.
Thanks, Kent. All right, we'll do one or two more if anybody else would like to share. Anybody else? By the way, if you're online, you can write your answers online. Share them with us. Anybody else? All right, man, you're a quiet group today. Well, thank you for sharing, those of you who did. And we will discuss that at 6:30 this evening at Spirituality Recovery. It's good to kind of recognize and thank our friends once in a while. So if you think of somebody, thank you, Aaron. I hope you do that. So I just want to kind of give you a heads up. Sometimes when I look for a joke to kind of go with my sermon, I pick cute more than hilarious. So you know I'm in trouble when I have to qualify my jokes, right? So a priest, a rabbi, and an atheist walk into a bar. The bartender sees them and he says, "What is this, a joke?" That's kind of cute. Come on. A Buddhist priest walks into a pizzeria. The pizza maker asks the priest, "What can I get for you?" The Buddhist, in a quiet voice, replies, "Can you make me one with everything?" Okay, that one you liked. Thank you. All right. So, kind of funny, when I first planned out this series, the title that I chose for today was You Are a Priest. And the reality is that we have a lot of people here at Lighthouse who have had some PTSD from past church experiences. And my fear was that that would scare people away as opposed to attract them. Turn and tell somebody that's probably true. In the Old Testament, priests were men who were mediators between God and people. Priests represented and spoke for God to the people, and the people would bring sacrifices to the priests, and those sacrifices would be sacrificed on their behalf for the forgiveness of their sins by the priests. And so priests were mediators between God and human beings. You with me? They were go-betweens in many ways. And so what happened was that the people of the Old Testament kind of had this system where to connect with God, you go to a priest. My guess is that there are some of you here today who have grown up in spiritual or church environments where that's kind of how it worked, where if you want to connect with God, you go to the church and you connect with the priest, or you confess to the priest. Now, interestingly, in the New Testament, there's a new reality because we learn that Jesus is God's Son and that he has come to us, that we no longer have to go to a priest or anyone else, that he has come to you and to me, that we can get straight to God with our needs, with our confessions, that we can have even a relationship with this God, even a personal relationship. So you'll see in the New Testament verses like this, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5, where it says, "For there is one God and only one mediator who can reconcile God and humanity, the man of Christ Jesus." So there's no longer any go-betweens for us except for Jesus. He's the go-between. He's the mediator. You want to know God? Look to Jesus. You want to know who God is, the attributes of God? Look to Jesus. That's what the New Testament teaches us. So one of the images that the New Testament actually points to help us understand our new relationship with God through Jesus Christ is that every believer and follower of Jesus is a priest. Can you believe that? That every believer and follower of Jesus is a priest. Have you ever felt like a priest? I don't think of you as priests very often. Actually, I do. Let me show you. In 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, it says this. It says, "And you are living stones that God is building into his spiritual temple. What's more, you are his," what? Holy priests. In Jesus, you are a holy priest. You know, kind of wipe out some of the images perhaps that you might have from the past. The Bible says you are a holy priest. Through the mediation of Jesus, you offer spiritual sacrifices that please God. Kind of a beautiful verse. Verse 9 in chapter 2 says this, "For you are a chosen people, you are royal priests, holy nation, God's own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for he called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." In other words, you represent God to the world by how you live. What this means is that if you are a believer in Jesus, and if you are a follower of Jesus, you are a priest. Say, "I am a priest." All believers are priests. Turn and tell somebody, you are a priest. Wow. It's almost kind of scary, isn't it? Now, one of the things that I want you to know is that as we've been talking about the way that we kind of speak to ourselves messages that drag us down, I just want you to think about for a moment the power of beginning to believe that indeed you are a priest. In other words, that you are able to connect directly to God and that you represent God to the world. You represent the Lord to the people that you know and interact with. Now, you might be a really poor priest, Or you might be a really good priest, but you're a priest. That's what the New Testament teaches, if you believe in Jesus. If you believe in Jesus, you are a priest. And my advice this morning would be, we might as well be good ones. Huh? Yeah? If I am one, I'd just soon be a good one. So, think about that for a moment. You get to share your faith with others. That you get to invite people to church, which means to potentially invite them to meet Jesus. That you might make a huge difference in somebody's life. Just simply by being who Jesus is working you to be, creating in you the person that you are becoming in faith through him. You are doing the Lord's work in your service. You are doing the Lord's work. So if we talk about an identity crisis, the images that we have been struggling with, they are nothing when we begin to think that we are kind of that close to God. Now, I chose the title, You Are a Friend, because it's the term that Jesus actually uses. In many ways, it conveys the same thing, but I think even more. You can have a personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ, and you can become a friend with Jesus. To be his friend, then, will begin to give your life a deeper sense of purpose. And what I want you to know is that the messages that we have been talking about these last weeks that have been self-destructive, for some of us they've been messages perhaps that we have spoken to ourselves since childhood, or they kind of resound through our brains and we tell ourselves, especially if we make a mistake or we get down or we're struggling, things like that I'm unlovable, that I'm forsaken or ugly, weak, hopeless, worthless, unforgivable, failure, unredeemable, fearful, incompetent. That those are not messages of Jesus. Those are messages of Satan. They're messages of perhaps your addiction or your mental illness. They're messages that have perhaps destroyed your life or have brought you to a place where you've begun to believe them. And what I want you to hear is that those messages are not true. They are not true. And I think that there is nowhere clearer in the grasp of understanding who we are to God and who he created us to be than to know that we can be his friend. If you have a Bible along, I'm going to invite you to turn to John chapter 15. It's on page 1366 in our recovery Bibles. We don't have our Bibles in our chairs right now, and so you can Google John 15:9, John 15:9, and you will find these verses, or you can use the YouVersion Bible app, which I would highly recommend you download. 1366 in the Recovery Bible, John chapter 15, verse 9. These are the words of Jesus. He says, I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you will remain in my love just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. Wouldn't that be nice? Joy overflowing. This is my commandment, love each other. No greater love, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And you are my friends, says Jesus, if you do what I command. No longer call you slaves, but a master doesn't confide in his slaves. You are my friends. And since I have told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give me whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other, he says. And love the image of Jesus as a friend. And I don't know how often you've thought of God in that way. A lot of people who come to Lighthouse haven't, at least not in a long time. Jesus says, I am your friend, that I can be your friend. And I thought for a little while this week, what would it mean if I really fully believed that Jesus was my friend? And I kind of played it out a little bit, and I came up with some of these things. What it would mean is that I would actually believe that Jesus is always there, because a good friend is always there. Have there been times when you felt like God had backed away from you or God had abandoned you? Jesus as your friend means that God is always there with you. Jesus, your friend, is always there. It means that if Jesus is a good friend of mine, he loves to spend time with me. Loves to spend time with me. That's what good friends do. It means that Jesus, my good friend, doesn't judge me. But it also means that Jesus, my good friend, will speak truth to me even if I don't want to hear it. Because that's what a good friend does, right? It means that Jesus, my best friend, is going to encourage and bring out the best in me. It means that Jesus, your best friend, your good friend, is going to understand and enjoy life and understands what it means to enjoy a good time. It means that Jesus, your best friend, he's there and you can tell him anything because he's a good listener. It means that Jesus, your best friend, forgives and even gives do-overs. It's pretty cool. It's what best friends do. It means that Jesus, your good friend, isn't your personal 911 rescue team. It's not what good friends are. But good friends will walk with you through your stuff. That's what good friends are, right? A good friend will show you a better way. But in regards to Jesus, there's even more. I read it a little while ago in John chapter 15. It's going to be on the screen. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. That's what Jesus has done for you and for me. That's how much he loves you as a friend. That he was willing to die on the cross for you, to lay his life down for you. That Jesus gave his life for you. And on the cross, he took all of these destructive messages, that resound in our heads, and he gives to us this new identity that I know I brought this board out, but it's on the bricks over here, that I am hopeful. Say them after me. I am hopeful, redeemed, forgiven, chosen, strong, capable, brave, beautiful, loved, worthy, amazing, and one more, I am a friend. I'm a friend. I am a friend. I am a friend of the Lord Most High, who gave his life for me. Man, that is like really powerful stuff. Let me give you a spiritual principle that I just want you to take home with you today. If you hear one thing, this is what I want you to hear. That God has created and redeemed you with the desire to be in a love relationship with you, to be your friend. If you hear one thing, that's what I want you to hear. That God has created and redeemed. He died for you. He loves you unconditionally. He forgives you, whatever has come before this moment. He just wants to walk with you in a relationship, a loving relationship with you, and to be your friend. That is like profound news. Now, if it's true that Jesus wants to be our friend, we can be his friend and we can be friends with one another, right? You know, Jesus tells this great story, or actually it happens to him in Mark chapter 2, where Jesus is just starting his ministry and he's healing people. And there's this story about this man who is paralyzed, who was on a mat. Chances are you know people who have been paralyzed in this world, in this life. I can tell you that people who have those kinds of disabilities today have it much better than they did back then. I mean, in order to do anything back then, if you were paralyzed, you were completely dependent upon other people, you know, to eat, to move anywhere. It says that this man's world was a mat. You know, I'm kind of getting tired of like trying to stay in my house most of the time now, or is anybody else here trying to, you know, stay in my house most of the time? Well, this guy had a mat that was only big enough to carry him. That's how big his world was. And it says that, you know, he was brought out to beg every day, and that's how he was surviving. And if you were to look at this man a couple thousand years ago, you'd think he has got nothing going for him. But he had something pretty profound going for him. This man on his mat had some killer friends. He had some amazing friends who literally helped move his mat to where he needed to be. In fact, one day these friends had heard that Jesus, you know, was in the area, that he was teaching, that he was healing, and so they decided to bring the man to Jesus. They get there, and Jesus is in a house teaching, and the crowd is too big. They can't even get him in there. And chances are, you know what happens. Many of you, they went up on the roof, and they dug a hole in the roof. Now, that sounds, you know, more serious than it would be, at least back then, because we wouldn't want a hole in our roof. And not that the house owner was excited about it, but it was made out of mud and some branches and leaves, so he was easily able to repair it. But here there's this hole in the roof, and they lower the mat in front of Jesus. And I'm not even going to tell you what happens next if you don't know the story. Mark chapter 2, you can look it up as you go. But what I wanted to point out to you is that if you'd look at this man, he would have nothing going for himself. And sometimes we can look at ourselves in that same way, or people might look at us in that same way. But what he had is he had a killer group of people who cared about him. He had some amazing friends. And you know, the reality is that we all have a mat. You know, we all have those things that kind of confine our life and become life issues for us. Everybody's got them. Everybody struggles. You know, we all deal with emotional health and mental health and physical health and even spiritual health. And, you know, we've especially talked a lot about spiritual health lately because we've been kind of, you know, referring to this diagram once in a while that our soul, our spirituality is that which integrates our decision making and our thinking and our bodies. And when we're out of whack, that there's often a spiritual component to that, or perhaps it might even be the root of the cause. And so, you know, this man, you will find if you read the story, he actually did have a spiritual problem, but Jesus brought healing to his body. And one of the things that I know is that when people first come to Lighthouse Church, they've usually got something going on. So I don't know where you were when you first came here. Chances are you had something going on. There was something kind of out of whack in the whole soul, body, mind, and will thing. What I've also come to learn is that for nearly all of us who keep coming back here, we get to a point where we acknowledge that in this life, I think I need God and I need other people. I need God and I need other people. We need each other. And one of the profound spiritual realities that we often forget, it is that it is in community, And it is in a relationship with God's children that we often meet Jesus and we begin to grow in love with Jesus. That it's often through people in our lives that we connect with, where we meet Jesus and we begin to become connected. I went back and pulled out a book that I had read quite a number of years ago. Picture is going to be on the screen. It's by John Ortberg. Everybody's Normal Till You Get to Know Them. One of the great book titles of all time, I think. And it's a great book on community. And he had some quotes in there that I decided I wanted to share with you today that I thought were just really helpful as we think about, not only being a friend of Jesus, but being a friend with each other and a community of people who need each other. He said this. This is a quote from Harry Stack Sullivan, who was a pioneer in interpersonal psychology. He's quoted to have said, it takes people to make people sick, and it takes people to make people well. Now, interestingly, there's a little bit of theological perspective that I disagree with that statement, because I find that I'm pretty capable of making myself sick. I don't even need other people sometimes. But on the other hand, I also know that people shape me and shape us more than any other force in our lives, for better or for worse. And what I've learned here at Lighthouse Church is that the way that God really brings healing into most of our lives is through other people. And so let me ask you this question this morning. Who are you relying on to help carry your mat? Who are you relying on to help carry your mat? Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. You've heard that before. Another quote about community that I thought was quite profound. It comes from Jean Vanier. A community is never there just for itself or for its own glory. It comes from and belongs to something much greater and deeper, the heart of God to bring humanity to fulfillment. A community is never an end in itself, but it is a sign pointing further and deeper, calling people to love. Beautiful quote about true community. Finally, another quote from a Yuri, and I'm not going to even try the last name. He's talking about family, and I would actually include this in true friends anyway, that kind of are the same as the paralytic had. He says, a group which possesses and implements an irrational commitment to the well-being of its members. What's the key word there, you think? Irrational, yeah. Isn't that amazing? A group, true friends, family, are a group which possesses and implements an irrational commitment to the well-being of its members. Jesus says in John's gospel, this is my command, I want you to love each other. Love each other unconditionally, just as I have loved you. Something kind of irrational about that when you think about it. God has an irrational commitment to your well-being. You need friends in your life with an irrational commitment to your well-being. In Jesus Christ, you also have the ability to be a friend with an irrational commitment to the well-being of others. I was thinking about my own journey this last week here to Lighthouse Church, and one of the things that I realize is that for a lot of my years of life, I really hadn't developed a lot of deep friendships. They've been more surface. Anybody else ever kind of be like that? And when I was really struggling, I wasn't real sure who I could talk to. And there were people I could have. I get that. I know that. What I've really kind of zeroed in on is that it was my independence and my belief that I could do it on my own that was what was making me sicker and sicker. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that. It was my independence and my belief that I would be able to get through it. I would be able to do it on my own. I'd be able to suck it up and manage. And it was that attitude that led to my unhealthiness. Psychologist Alan McGinnis says, rule number 1 for entering into deep friendship is assigning priority to your relationships. Rule number 1 for entering into deep friendship is assigning priority to your relationships. The problem is that many of us don't have great friends because pursuing community and friends has never been a high priority. True friends. In my own recovery, something shifted when I opened myself up to fellowship and developing friendships. It's kind of a weird thing because I had heard people talk about that, and I didn't believe them, but something shifted. You know, when I started to open myself up to fellowship and friendships that were beyond even just the meetings of the program I was trying to work. In Acts chapter 2, verse 42, this is kind of a section that talks about the early church. And it says that all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to understanding the teachings of the Bible. That's not surprising, right? But then it says, and to fellowship. Then it says, and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper. Oh, and to prayer. Now, you think about that, and you think about the church, and, you know, what is a church supposed to be? Well, it's a place where you go and you learn, and, you know, you learn and you grow in faith, and then it says, and it's probably a good place to pray. We should pray when we're in church, but how often do we think that not only did the early followers of Jesus devote themselves to growing and to learning and to praying, but to fellowship? Good heavens, what was that all about? And even sharing meals together, once in a while it was the Lord's Supper. They devoted themselves to fellowship and to sharing meals. Here's the deal. They didn't just study the Bible and pray, because perhaps they knew already, they'd spent 3 years with Jesus, a lot of these people. They knew already that one of the profound ways that God works in our lives is through relationships and in fellowships and even in breaking bread. We can also assume that in their fellowship they did more than drink coffee and talk about the weather, which is kind of depressing right now, I might say. I would guess that they did more than drinking coffee and talking about the Minnesota Vikings, because that's really depressing right now. What we know is that they did life together. You can read the book of Acts. They did life together. There was real, authentic community and the kind of stuff going on that friendships require. So they were growing in faith and they were praying. But one of the ways we grow in faith and connect with God is through connecting with one another. And so I just spent a little time just thinking about what would such a community look like? What are the essentials of it? And I came up with a few things that I'd like to share before we close today, that especially if you're looking for authentic community or some deeper connectedness in your life for your own well-being, here are things that I think are critical. But these are really critical for us as a church, okay? For those of you committed here to this place. The first thing is that it requires appropriate trust and transparency. Appropriate trust and transparency. What that means is that if all your relationships are surface and you never share what's going on inside, you're not kind of meeting the well-being standard that true community can bring out in us. Now, what do I mean by appropriate trust and transparency? Have you ever met anybody where after meeting them for like 30 seconds, you know their whole life story? Sometimes that's a little much, right? And then there's sometimes when I meet people and I'll know them for 10 years and there's still a wall built around them that is really hard to get through. Some of you might be in that situation right now. So what do we mean by appropriate trust and transparency, and how do we know what to share? And so I love when I know you love when I come to the board over here. So you're probably thinking I'm in store for another circle, don't you? Because that's what I seem to be really good at is circles. I'm going to dazzle you today because I'm going to not draw a circle. I am going to draw, my markers are running out here, a V or a triangle. Somebody say good job with the triangle. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So that's actually pretty darn good. I would consider it more like a piece of pizza, but so whenever I teach about community and relationships, one of the things that I like to do is I like to draw a triangle as a kind of representative of the life community that we spend a lot of our time in. So let me tell you that sociologists say that everybody kind of needs a third community in their life. What's the first community? For most of us, it's probably home and family. What's the second community in your life? For many of us, it might be work. Right now, it might be something else for you. It might be, school or a treatment center or whatever it is. That's kind of your second community right now. And they say that we all need a third community. If you remember the old Cheers sitcom, a place where everybody knows my name, huh? A place where I belong here, okay? And of course, that's something that the church is trying to always compete for. But for some of you, that third place might be your recovery community right now. It might be some other group of friends or connectedness that you've made. For some of you, it might be the group of friends that you need to change. For some of you, it might be that I need a new third community because the third community I've got ain't helping, right? And so I want to suggest that if you're open to it, Lighthouse Church can be a third community in your life. It can be this place. And when I think about how we invest in community, I like to say that there are different layers to community, that as we invest ourselves in community, we will find that there are different levels of openness and sharing, perhaps. So we've got the top level of community, where it's kind of the whole community, and we want you to know that one of the keys to community in the broad level here is some openness and transparency that you're not perfect, that you've got some issues going on. When we ask the question, we don't need to know the whole story in church, but give us a little bit. So I'm pretty comfortable telling you that I'm Dale. I'm an alcoholic. I have other life-controlling issues that I deal with every day of my life. I'm long ways from perfect. But that's probably, for the most part, all you need to know, right? But then, as this kind of narrows down, it narrows down with the number of people, but it's all part of the same community. Somewhere in the middle, I would like to suggest that we need a smaller group of people where there's a higher level of transparency, where I can share more honestly some of the real things that I'm struggling with and find support. In churches, they often will call that a small group. If you come to Spirituality Recovery, that might be, the group that you're kind of becoming part of. If you are in recovery, that might be your home group. You might have a home group where there's a core of people where you can be pretty open and honest, and they're supportive in your journey. So I would like to suggest we all need that kind of a group and community. And it's something that we as a church need to work on in the future, creating those opportunities. But then I would also say that everybody needs what we find down here, and that is those 1, 2, 3 people in your life that you can pretty much share anything with. And they're going to support you. They're going to be your friend. They're not going to reject you. And there's a high level of trust. So when I talk about appropriate trust and transparency, that's what I'm talking about. You with me? Some of you have probably had trust broken, and so trust and transparency is very hard. You're probably going to want to start up here small, but be working on some of this. All right. So let me share. Secondly, I think in regards to community and what we need in our life, we need appropriate unconditional acceptance and love. Now, how about that for making unconditional conditional, right? Acceptable unconditional love and acceptance. What does that mean? Well, we all need a place where we're pretty much unconditionally loved and accepted. And I would actually say that if this is kind of your home community, that Lighthouse Church is meant to be that. What I mean by appropriate is that there might be times when our behavior suggests that we should probably still love you, but you're not welcome here for now. We don't even probably need to go into what that could look like. But if you're disruptive, if your behavior is hurtful or harmful to others, there could come a time where we'd say, you're welcome here, but you need to kind of work on some things before you come back. And so that's what I mean. I mean appropriate, unconditional love and acceptance. And so, the higher there is, the chances are the more tolerant we are, the smaller you get in those numbers. If you're in a small group where somebody's really acting up, you probably give them the boot until they're ready to, come back in a different way. Everybody needs a place where I can be myself, but I don't have to stay in that place. Everybody needs a place where I can be myself, but I don't have to stay in that same myself. I can grow and I can change. Next, appropriate enjoyment of life in each other's. What that means is, that we need to, in community, have healthy boundaries and behavior. But I really believe that part of the way we connect with God and grow is by enjoying the goodness of life, enjoying fellowship and the fun with each other. We try to do a lot of fellowship and fun here in this church. I think one of the things that we need to do better always as human beings, as followers of Jesus, is learn to not only accept or tolerate each other's uniqueness, but sometimes maybe celebrate our uniqueness. If you're a little quirky, not looking at anybody in particular, if you're a little quirky, how about instead of tolerating each other's quirkiness, once in a while we celebrate? You know what? God, he really broke the mold when he made you, didn't he? And I think that one of the things that is so important is that, as people, we need to have those connectedness, those connection points with things that we like to do. Let me give you a couple of examples. So I mentioned in the announcements that we have a craft group that meets next Saturday. They meet about once a month. If you ever want to torture me, make me go to the craft group, okay? But praise the Lord that there are people who love to do crafts. And they get together and they fellowship while they're doing them, and they do them together once a month. Anybody's welcome to that group. Right before COVID, we had some folks who were trying to start a photography group. And then COVID hit and it kind of destroyed almost everything. I hope those of you who are trying to get that going, I hope that you restart that sometime. If you have an interest that you like, chances are there's other people within the community that may have the same interest. Let's try it. Okay, last thing that I wanted to share, then we're going to wrap up, is whenever we're talking about community, especially in this place, it's very important that we have an empty chair in our room. And what that means is that groups and community can become unhealthy when it turns in on itself and doesn't open itself up to the person that God might be bringing. So I don't know how big our church is going to get, how big the fellowship's going to be, but it's going to be my commitment as long as I'm a pastor of this church to have an open chair for whoever God decides to bring today. Some of you, a fair number of you, COVID started, 8 months ago? How many of you weren't even here 8 months ago? Look at that. So quite a few people, you know, and I mean, we have open chairs every week for whatever it is that you're interested in. My challenge to you today is not only to respond to the love and the friendship that Jesus offers you, but to make community and friendship a priority in your life. It's so hard right now with COVID. I mean, the whole distancing thing does not lend itself to community. These are stressful times. But what I'm learning is that we need each other more now than we ever did. Because we're in this together. God is with you. He is your friend. But we can be with each other and walk through this time as a... Let's stand up and sing. God bless you. I hope you have a super day. And thanks for hanging with me this morning. And what a friend.
Everybody has trials and temptation. Everybody knows heartbreak, isolation. But we can lay our burdens down. Lay our burdens down. What a friend we have in Jesus. East to west, my sins are gone. I see grace on every horizon, and forever and ever His heart is my home. Everybody has fears. Everybody got worries. Everybody knows sorrow, devastation. But we can lay our burdens down. Lay our burdens down. What a friend we have in Jesus. East to west, my sins are gone. I see grace on every horizon, and forever and ever His heart is my home. No more betrayal, for He is faithful. He fills me up and my cup runs